Hi, it's Eva Karpman, and you're listening to the Dream Big podcast show, the place to go, to learn, laugh, and grow. Today we welcome Kyle Maynard on the no excuses mentality. Kyle lost his first 35 matches in wrestling and went on to become a champion wrestler. Oh, and he did it with arms that end at the elbows and legs that end near his knees. You ready to be inspired? It's time to dream big.
Welcome to the Dream Big podcast show. We're inspiring you to shoot for the moon, take aim and go. We bring to you amazing guests who truly love what they do. Every day they're living their dreams, and so can you. Dream big, take action to reach your goals. Are you pumped yet? It's showtime, let's rock and roll.
Okay, now let's turn our attention to this week's amazing guest, Kyle Maynard. Kyle was born with a rare condition known as congenital amputation that left him with arms that end at the elbows and legs that end near his knees. As you'll soon find out, that has not stopped him from living an incredible life. Kyle is a motivational speaker, best-selling author, entrepreneur, and ESPY award-winning mixed martial arts athlete, known for becoming the first quadruple amputee to reach the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro without the aid of prosthetics. There are so many powerful lessons in this episode, and I love this conversation. As always, we have show notes at dreambigpodcast.com/140, where we will include links to Kyle's website and everything we discussed in the interview. Without further ado, here's my interview with Kyle. Let's roll the tape. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, how are you, Eva?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing really well today. I just got finished working out and excited to talk to you.
I'm so excited also. I watched a bunch of your speeches and news stories, and I was so inspired by your positive energy and attitude and confidence. But before we get into what you're doing now and all the amazing accomplishments, let's start at the beginning. Can you share where you grew up and what was the condition you were born with?
Sure. I was born in Washington, D.C., and basically when I was born with a condition called congenital amputation. So my arms end at the elbows and my legs end at the knees. And my mom and dad had no idea I was going to be born with a disability, but it just turned out that way. And when then a couple weeks after I was born, my dad got out of the Army and we moved to Indiana. So I lived there close to my grandparents and my parents and my three younger sisters. We were all together for the first 10 years in Indiana. And then we moved down to Georgia, where I spent most of my life. And actually where I'm at currently is at my parents' house visiting them. So, but in the last couple of years, I've gotten to just travel all over the world. I've lived in San Diego and some in Virginia and traveled to probably 20 something different countries. And it's been a pretty wild adventure.
I'm sure your parents were surprised when you were born without full arms and legs, but they made a very important decision very early on, and that was to not treat you any different from other kids. And I'm sure that changed your life forever. So how thankful are you to your parents for not giving you special treatment?
I'm super thankful for that. And I can tell you definitely did a good job with your research. That's very cool that you picked up on that. They really did it was an important decision that they made because I think if they had treated me different, then I don't know if I would have ever really gotten to experience life in the way that I have now. And what I mean by that is, they had to let me go through a lot of failures just to figure things out. Even something as simple as picking up a spoon or a fork, I had to drop it hundreds of times or 1,000 times until I eventually figured it out. And that was, just one example, but there was a lot of examples of things like that where they let me go through those failures to then be able to get better and come out the other side and be able to do stuff now. Then, I can drive a car and, travel the world and do all kinds of crazy stuff, climbing mountains and, mixed martial arts and different things like that probably would have been impossible if they had treated me, and taken the disability into more consideration when I was younger, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's amazing because when you're a kid, and especially a young kid, you're forming beliefs, what you're capable of, and your parents just gave you that opportunity to form an empowering decision that you could just do everything on your own. So I know your parents taught you that you could do anything, and it's no surprise that one of the things you wanted to do was play sports. So I heard you joined the wrestling team, and I know from your profile on Oprah that you didn't win a single match for the first year and a half. So I wanted to ask you about that specifically.
Yeah.
Because I feel like people just give up too easily. So why'd you keep on competing after you lost your 35 matches?
Truthfully, if it were entirely up to me at that age, I would have quit, and I don't think that I had the level of foresight that you have currently. It's something where I think I agree that when you're a kid, you're forming the beliefs of who and what you are, but sometimes you do it and you don't even necessarily know what a belief is. You don't have anybody teach you about what those things are, which is, I think, is kind of a cool part of your mission of teaching other kids. Just, hey, this is a belief and how these things get formed about who and what you are. For me, I had big dreams for sure, but I didn't even realize the importance of what was happening then. So when I was losing all those matches, I hated it. And, I was really struggling, and my dad would bring me to tournaments, and I would sometimes, I'd go in multiple weight classes and I would just lose all day, and he'd videotape matches. And sometimes I'd lose 4 matches in a day. Sometimes it was just 2 matches where I'd lose in the morning and wait there all day, wrestle again, lose again. And we'd come back home and it felt like the whole Saturday was wasted. And then Sunday would come around and we'd watch a lot of the video of the day before and those matches where I lost. And it was really discouraging time. And, my mom and dad wouldn't let me quit my second season that I signed up. I signed up the first season, didn't win a match, did not want to do it again. But then I signed up my second season just thinking that maybe there's a possibility that I would win a match. My dad said, he kind of told me a little bit of a white lie where he said that he didn't win a match his whole first year either, but he said he did win his second year. And he said that it was a pretty common experience with wrestlers. And so I believed him my whole life. And when I was older and interviewing my grandpa, my dad's dad, for my book, I found out that whole story about him losing all those matches his first year was a complete lie. Apparently he'd won a bunch, but it was it was a good one, and it kept me going. And so when I, then halfway through that year, I started winning. When I started winning, that it completely changed that belief in me that before it seemed impossible, and now it seemed possible. It seemed like I was almost just out of reach. To give people a visual, my arms, they end at the elbows and my legs end at the knees. And when I was wrestling, I'm going up against other able-bodied kids. And so things would just be out of my reach to go and grab their legs and take them down, or grab their arm and pull them and flip them, or whatever it was. And so when I won that first match, it just completely altered and changed that belief. And it made me realize that, hey, it's possible. It's possible I can be really good at this.
Big dreamers out there, this is such an important lesson, because your big dreams in life will not happen overnight. You'll likely fail at the beginning, and not just once. You may fail many, many times. So Kyle lost his first 35 matches, but then he went on to become one of the state's best wrestlers. So can you share some of your accomplishments in wrestling, and not only in high school, but what you did afterwards in college, and then even after college?
Sure. So like I said, I started off really, really bad, and lost those first 35 matches. But then after I won that match, then started winning a lot more. And so then I started in 6th grade when I was 11 years old. And that was the year that I lost every match. Then in 7th grade, halfway through that year, was when I won my first match. And then it just started getting better. In 8th grade, I actually won the region tournament and went to the States. And then in high school, wrestled for one of the top teams in the Southeastern United States and won over 100 matches. I wrestled varsity for one of the top teams in the Southeast and won 36 matches my senior year, and got to go to the national tournament and placed top 12 in the nation in my weight class at my senior year. So that was, it was a really cool experience and journey with that. And I also competed in weightlifting, which is a very similar process. When I started lifting weights, I was lifting 5 pounds on each arm. And then by the time I was a senior in high school, I was doing a lot more. I lifted 240 pounds 23 times and won the GNC's World's Strongest Teen title, and then had my best ever in a lift of 420 pounds. So, when I started out, my point kind of in saying that too is when I started out, I was just using a tiny amount of weight, and I was comparing myself to other people in the gym and thinking, oh, there's no way I'll be able to do what they're doing someday. But turns out I was able to do a lot more. And so, it's really important, I think, to realize, what we're comparing ourselves to. And that's just the physical types of things. But there's a lot of other things, I think, that, I could share that journey with too, that look the exact same. For instance, starting climbing mountains, and started with bath towels duct taped on my arms and my feet, and eventually had some people help make some amazing custom shoes and climb some of the highest mountains in the world. But it's the same in business. It's the same sometimes in relationships, and in dating and marriages and family and spirituality and so many things in life. We start off really bad at something, and then we compare ourselves, we get down on ourselves. Maybe even it's in painting and in art and some sort of instrument that you play, or, literally any skill that you want to develop and master. If you're going to do something outside of your comfort zone, you're 100% right that you're going to have to build in that period of time where you expect that you're going to be bad at it at first. And then you gradually become more comfortable and you get better and you're able to go and take on and do more with ease. And then you look back and you don't even necessarily realize how far you come, which I think is an important aspect too, is really just to be grateful for that process and that journey while we're on it. Because, it's sometimes we get so focused and fixated on the goal of where we're going, instead of just really enjoying right now on this whole moment and journey on the way there.
Big dreamers, just imagine if Kyle had quit after his 35th match. Then all these accomplishments he just shared would have never happened. And what a shame that would be. So, Kyle, I know your athletic feats have extended beyond wrestling. As you said, you were climbing mountains, but you're the first quadruple amputee to reach the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. So, why do you attempt these types of feats, which I'm sure many people would think would be impossible? And what feeling do you get when you accomplish it?
That is a great question. I think there's something inside of me that just wants to be able to go and explore and see this world for what it is. I realize that, it's a pretty amazing place, this planet that we're on. And when I was younger, I was stuck in a wheelchair. One of my friends would go and run off into the woods and, or up a hill, and I couldn't follow them, or it was hard for me to. I really had that desire that I wanted to be able to go in and go to places where few people have gone. And so now, the mountain climbing, sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes it's, extremely hard. The mountain climbs themselves have been the hardest physical tests of my life. And yet it just, I don't know, there's something that it feeds like a part of my soul that, sitting at home and watching Netflix can't. But at the same time, I promise I enjoy that aspect of my life too. And I love, sitting at home and relaxing and enjoying that aspect of my life. It's just, my life needs to have that balance of both worlds in order for me to feel full and complete. So it's just really about that journey. I don't know, like the hero's journey is kind of a concept that's made a really big impact on my life. And a big part of the hero's journey is crossing the threshold into the unknown, meaning you kind of take a risk with something. And you put yourself out there. For you to start this podcast, you put yourself out there. I have thought about starting a podcast before a long time, and I haven't done it. So in a lot of ways, not to compare myself to you, but you've done something that I haven't done there because you've put yourself out and exposed yourself to that risk and criticism. And sometimes when you do big things, then it opens you up to criticism from others. And that's okay. You know what? But you're the one on that journey. You're on your own hero's journey and continuing to go into the unknown. and face those things. And it's really cool. There's great rewards there for doing that because you get to meet people that otherwise people wouldn't get to meet. We're having this conversation. You get to see places that other people wouldn't otherwise get to go and see. So that's really the true reward for the hero on that journey and that quest, is ultimately kind of becoming a mentor and a guide to help somebody else on their journey is a big aspect. And selfishly, then you get to go and explore and see things that other people wouldn't in the world. That is the gift of having a big dream and having the courage to cross the threshold. I think it, nourishes a part of our soul that it just doesn't get touched when we stay at home, if that makes sense. And we're just play it safe. Not that playing it safe isn't important, but if that's all that we do, then we miss out on a big aspect of this life.
Thank you so much first for saying that this podcast is just pushing outside of my comfort zone. And we talk all the time on this podcast of pushing outside of your comfort zone, because if you don't try new things, then and you don't push boundaries, then you'll never find out what your potential is and what you can really accomplish. So I know a lot of people are inspired by seeing what you have been able to accomplish.
Aw, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm inspired by you. And you know what? I think the thing that I'm learning now too, though, is really we can go and do and achieve amazing things. But really, I think the real gift is to achieve that inner peace, to realize, that you're perfect as you are, and that, it's that we don't necessarily have to try and prove anything to anyone other than just to prove those things to ourselves and to see, what, this is something that I want to go and do, not because I feel like I have to, but just because I feel like I get to. I do believe that if we love ourselves enough, we'll love the world. And a lot of times, if we do things from a place of trying to fill some gap or some void inside of us, then it'll never be complete. It's something that'll continue to need to be fulfilled, and it'll tell us that we're never good enough, and it'll have us strive to be always more. I know friends that are literally worth hundreds of millions of dollars that feel poor. That's not what I'm talking about. It's really like nourishing ourselves first and realizing, like we can put our own oxygen mask on first. We can, take care of ourselves, but through that expression of ourselves and loving ourselves, then we can love the world. Like it's an important aspect. And I've gone through phases of that too. I've gone through times. So I don't want to pretend like I've got it figured out. When I first started doing public speaking and traveling and all that, then I was making a bunch of excuses and I was not living that hero's journey myself in my own way. I, frankly, gained probably 25 or 30 pounds when I first started speaking and traveling, and, was on the road and not eating healthy and not working out. And I got depressed, and it's not really a good combination to be a depressed motivational speaker, but it was something that I had to go and think of the deeper reasons. One, why I was doing what I was doing. And two, what is it that I want to go and create? And what experience do I want to help people with and experience for themselves? What experience do I want to have myself of this life? And, it's taken me 33 years to get to the point where I finally feel good about that. So, it's a really interesting place of just, I think learning to surrender to life exactly as it is, with everyone listening, there are things that we want to go and change about ourselves. Sometimes it's, the color of our eyes or our hair or, our skin or arms and legs or no arms and legs or, whatever it is, or how much we weigh, or, if my niece has type 1 diabetes, for instance, that's a big thing. I mean, there's all kinds of disabilities and different things, but just learning to accept life for the lessons that it gives us. And all of those things contain lessons and gifts. And then, we are much more prepared to go on that journey and help other people's on theirs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like one of the mantras I know you live your life by is no excuses, which is the title of your book. So I know you've mostly lived by that mantra with all you've accomplished, but can you share with our big dreamers what the no excuses mentality means to you and why it's a philosophy worth adopting?
Yeah. I think it's meant different things to me at different times. And I would say when I was younger, it was just no excuses of just that's kind of how I was taught to live, in terms of if you're um, you know, my mom's attitude kind of was like, if you get hurt playing and you want to cry, then like you better have a open wound, there better be a bone sticking out of the wound if you're going to cry about something. But, later in life now, I would say it's more of like, I look at, the fact, I think there are always inner excuses that we give ourselves, almost always will our brain tell us that, we're not good enough, or you are, you're not this, you're not that, or you said this the wrong way, or see that person doesn't like you because of this or that. Like it's more of that inner dialogue and voice. And it's learning to realize that like that's all a lie, like inside of us, there exists kind of, an infinite and eternal deep capacity to love and to spread love and to love ourselves and love each other. And it's so now I think the no excuses message to me, it means more about relationship than anything else. There's a word in yoga that they say at the end of yoga classes, and that word is namaste. And that word means that the light, the divine light inside of me recognizes and sees the divine light inside of you. And no matter what conception, or what, spiritual background or secular background you want to go and take with that, when you look inside of somebody else's eyes and you really truly recognize that piece of them, that's the same in you and them, even no matter how different they may seem, like that's the true bridge of that no excuses message, is like, no matter who or what or where we are, it's like just to love, to be love, and to share that and to spread that. Like no one is in control of ourselves but ourselves. Like we are the only ones, like we are in full control of ourselves. And frankly, we have no control over anybody else and how anybody else operates. And we could wish that we could go and change people, but we really can't. And the weird thing is that when we truly accept that and we accept ourselves and we quit trying to blame things on others and we really truly look within and see where we're doing that, making those excuses ourselves, the whole, our whole life and world and things open up and doorways open up that previously they wouldn't have. As Joseph Campbell said, like when you follow your bliss, to me, that bliss is in relationship with other people. He said, doors will open where there are previously only walls, and doors will open for you that would not open for anyone else.
I love that. And I think it's so important. I did a podcast a few weeks ago about making like a decision a must instead of a should. And also that you shouldn't criticize and try to change anyone else, and just realize that you can be yourself and it doesn't matter what you look like or act like. You can just be yourself.
Totally. You got it.
If you decide that you should do something, then the excuses will creep in. If you must do something, you make it happen.
Yeah. And being yourself is perfectly okay. As long as you're, to me, as long as yourself, your true self, like wants to bring good to the world, then that's awesome. And like be unapologetically yourself, and and realize that when you are being yourself, other people don't always like that. And that's okay. If sometimes that's where the resistance comes up and people will say certain things or whatever else or be a certain way. But where I approach this now is every single person that I interact with every day is an opportunity for me to look at and reflect back and see, how am I feeling towards that person? If I'm being judgmental, if I'm feeling separate from that person or angry at that person or frustrated at something, then that's where I just pause and I realize I'm in control of myself. I'm not in control of what that other individual is doing. And and it's okay. And just somehow, in some way, by accepting that and accepting ourselves, then it allows for a different type of relationship to occur there. And maybe there's, maybe that just means going our separate ways. Maybe, there's some people that we are never going to sort of agree with or reconcile with. And that's okay. Everybody's on their own path and their own journey. Everybody's trying to figure it out. And it's the thing that unites us here is we're all here. And, we kind of get thrown into this life wondering where we came from, where we're going, what we're supposed to do while we're here, why we're here in the first place. And maybe a big aspect of it is just to enjoy this crazy, wild process and help other people in their enjoyment of it as well. And a big aspect of that is, I think, helping people awaken to these bigger dreams that they have. Because those big dreams, if you look all throughout history, it's been the people who have those big dreams. Those are the ones who have changed the world to have the moment in time where you and I can sit here and have this conversation now. And we can sit in comfortable environments, in air conditioning, and have, reliable access to food and water and shelter and love. Maybe not everybody has that, but the world has gotten better at such a remarkably fast pace. And I think a lot of times we put our focus only on the things that are wrong with the circumstance, because that's kind of in our nature. But instead of always putting our focus on where things are wrong with things, we can put our focus on where they're right, where they're good, where they're true. Something that's really changed my life, the more that I focus on it, is where the attention goes, the energy flows. So where you put your attention, where you put your focus, that will guide and dictate the course of everything. And so I just love it because you are living proof of the fact that is a real thing. You are helping awaken other people, and you're still on your journey too. And there's still things that, that you struggle with that I struggle with, that we all do. But it's, we can continually, even if it's 1,000 times a day, our mind will drift off into the doubt, into the excuses or the beating ourselves up. But then it's just, nope, bring it back to what's right, what's good, what's true. And that will become stronger, such that eventually it just becomes a habit. And we're not even it's just on autopilot. Then we can live life in so much more peace and ease, and amazing things happen then that we never otherwise would have even known to be possible.
I totally agree, Kyle. And for our last couple questions before we end this interview, I have a few rapid fire questions.
All right.
If you go back in time and talk to your 10-year-old self, what would be your best advice?
I think my best advice would be, at 10 years old, I was in a really dark place. I was in the toughest place of my life. In fact, at 10 years old, I tried to take my life. I was that in a really, really hard place. And I would have had no earthly idea how crazy and adventurous my life would become now. So I don't think that my 10-year-old self, if I told him, he would even be able to believe it or conceive it. So I think what I would tell him to do is really just, hold on and try to do good with your life. Even though you'll mess up, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to hurt people, people will hurt you, but hold on and keep trying to do good and just wait and see what can happen.
That's great advice for our big dreamers. When you have doubted yourself in the past, what made you overcome those fears and continue to pursue your dream?
I think it was really just taking some bold step or action towards something. It was sometimes we overcomplicate things in our head of all the different things that could happen. I think it was Mark Twain. He said, "I've suffered many terrible atrocities in my life, most of which never actually happened." Our mind is capable of dreaming up all of these terrible scenarios that can go and happen to us, and 99% of the time they don't. So I think that that's kind of a big thing, there is just, there was a Mike Tyson's boxing coach. His name was Cus D'Amato. He said, heroes and cowards, they feel the same fear. Heroes just respond to it differently. So, everybody feels the fear. Everybody does. And if we look at some people and we think that they haven't faced that fear, and, either they're lying or they're the 0.0001% that's just born without that ability to like process that in their brain. And I don't even necessarily think that may be accurate. Everybody feels that fear. So sometimes that fear, that anxiety, really, I think a lot of it is that anxiety. It's telling us something, needs a shift, and it needs to shift in a direction. And if we were to listen to it instead of try to suppress it, we live in a society where we try to suppress that anxiety with medication and things like that. And I'm not trying to say that medication is not important at times, but sometimes I think we get over reliant on it and we suppress the anxiety when really the anxiety is the gift telling us, hey, you know what, you can make a change here or there, or, maybe go in this direction. Maybe you shouldn't suppress that anxiety because you're going down a path that you really don't feel most aligned with, that if you went down a different path, you would feel differently. I don't know. I mean, that's just my kind of 2 cents on it, is maybe sometimes we need to move towards the fear and try to suppress it instead of try to run from it.
You have already made many of your dreams a reality, but if you look at yourself today, what's your big dream for the future?
Say my biggest dream right now for the future is to have, a home base and a family, and to create that aspect of my life. I want to create experiences for people, to bring people to the past. I think sometimes we aren't so grateful for all of the things that technology has afforded us because we've just gotten used to it. We've gotten accustomed to it. But when we realize how much we take it for granted, then we have an immense amount more gratitude for it. So that's a big part of my thinking and project right now, is how to find different ways to bring people to the past and make people more excited about the present.
Where can our audience find out more about you?
If you type my name into YouTube, like you've obviously done to do some research for this, and there's a bunch of videos on there, and probably the easiest way to find things out about my story. And I am semi-active on social media, but I also don't like to spend a ton of time on it just because I feel like it can be a giant distraction away from my life. But that's just my personal preference. So I try to find that balance of communicating with things, but also not spending too much time on it. So if somebody does send me a message, and it's a really important message, then probably the best way to do it would be to send it to my website, which is if you just type my name into any search engine, it'll pop up.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all you are doing to spread big dreams to the world. It's so crazy to think about how, some of your listeners hear something that you'll say and you're setting their life on a different course. I'm so happy for you taking that risk, and that, and you and your mom and doing it together. And it's just this really cool kind of experience. I'm super excited and honored to have been one of your guests.
Thank you. And big dreamers out there, remember, you can find Kyle on his website. And also, if it's an immediate question, give it to his website. And also, make no excuses in life, big dreamers.
That's right.
Make sure you make no excuses, and get Kyle's book, No Excuses, also. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Thank you. Hope to stay in touch and continue to see what you do on your journey.
For sure. Bye.
Bye.
Isn't Kyle incredible? Big dreamers, I always say that you should not expect big dreams to be easy, and so many people give up because they do not see immediate results. Kyle shared how he lost his first 35 wrestling matches. Can you imagine if he had given up when he lost 5 or 10 matches, and how that would have changed his whole life? Thank you, Kyle, for your time and for all the great tips and lessons you taught our big dreamers. Did you enjoy this special episode? If so, please tell your friends and family about the Dream Big podcast. If everyone listening can just tell one person about this episode, that would lead to a chain reaction that would get the Dream Big podcast in front of so many new people, which would be amazing. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified whenever we release a new episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Eva Karpman reminding you that you have unlimited potential. Your dreams are not optional, you need to make them essential. So take massive action to turn those big dreams into reality. Live with passion, the way life was meant to be. I'll see you next episode. Bye.